Today is the first of several Sundays when our reflections on the gospel are going to also bring in the theme of stewardship. And I'm really excited about that. I think that sometimes when people think about stewardship talk in the church, they think of it as a sort of like the pledge breaks on public TV and radio when they put that on and your programs go away. Well, I want to say that this is not just a commercial break. I think stewardship is at the heart of what we do here as a community, that stewardship and discipleship are very, very closely wrapped together, and it's important to see them in that light. I also know that sometimes talking about money in church makes people a little uncomfortable, as if we should be embarrassed to talk about the reality. And the reality is it takes money to keep this church open. It takes money to do what we need to do as a community. Money is ministry. It makes ministry possible. It's a reality. And I think that in this church especially, we're pretty thrifty. Not much gets wasted, but it's part of what we do. So the theme for our stewardship time this year is Share the Feast. And I think that sort of, it's related to the idea that stewardship is about taking a resource and taking care of it, making sure that it isn't wasted, keeping it healthy, making it grow, and having it so that it can be passed along to future generations. And in this case, I want to look at Good Shepherd Church itself, this parish community, as a treasure, as a resource that we've been given, that we have here because of the work and the ministry of people who were here before us, and that we need to be good stewards of, to help it continue to be healthy, and so that we can pass that along to the generations who come after us, and it'll still be here and still be strong. It's a wonderful parish community. It really is a treasure. It's a place of peace and refuge to people who come in, and it's also a witness to this world. And I think both of those things are important. So let me just give you the outline of what the next few weeks will be like. Starting today, when you leave here, you'll be able to pick up your stewardship envelope, which has a letter from me and also a pledge card. And we'll be talking about stewardship and discipleship today and for the next 2 Sundays. And then on November 2nd, when we celebrate the Feast of All Saints, that community of saints of which we are part will have the ingathering of those pledge cards, which ask you to contribute to this community in a variety of ways. It's not just a financial pledge, although that is on there. So we can think of that really as the harvest of abundance, the abundance that makes it possible for us to continue to share the feast we have here. And in these 3 weeks, starting today and the next 2 weeks in October, I've invited some people in the parish to join me in reflecting on this. The first is going to be Dan Pillie. I know a lot of you know Dan, and some of you may not. So I want to introduce him. He's a member of the vestry. He is a long-time member. How long have you been here?
38 years.
38 years of this parish, of this community. And he mentioned to me that he had prepared a talk last year for stewardship reflection, but that on the Sunday that he was scheduled to do that, he ended up attending another church where he was supposed to go look at this woman who was under consideration. So I know how that turned out. So I'm glad that he was there. But when he showed me the talk, I saw that it actually quoted our gospel today. And when I saw that, I knew it was meant to be. So I'm going to let Dan talk. Thank you.
Well, now that you already took away my first few statements, I don't have to go ahead and discuss that. Good morning. And when Pastor Harper talked to the vestry to give a talk about stewardship, I was having a hard time coming up with something to say. While I was putting together the prizes for the Bible book search that we did last summer, I Green Church, the bookstore over in Sodom. And on it, it has, I am the true vine, from John 15, 1 through 8. And that gave me the idea for what I was going to talk about. As John 15, verse 5 states, I am the vine, you are the branches. The man that abides in me, and in whom I abide, bears much fruit, because without me he can do nothing. I studied this passage and how it ties in with stewardship. I believe that the fruit of our labors are the gifts that God gives us and how we use them. We must use them wisely. This is my second term on the vestry, and in the last 2 years have been a revelation to me. I feel so much more relaxed with my life because I found that I have found my purpose. Not everyone is at the same point in their life, but when it comes, hold on because it is a great ride. It has been very satisfying for me to be able to do the things that I do, and it is very important for all of us to feel that way. We do not want to see our fruit wither on the vine and be thrown into the fire. The Daily Study Bible by William Barclay mentions in his writings on this package, it is the first principle of the New Testament. Uselessness invites disaster. The fruitless branch is on the way to destruction. Use your grapes wisely. The other verse that pertains to me about my vestry work is Matthew 22:14, which we just heard this morning. Many are called, but few are chosen. When I was growing up in the Catholic Church, a lot of you already know this, that has meant that we were to go into the priesthood or the convent. I later learned that this was about our vocation. I believe that this verse is what brought me to Good Shepherd Church and also my work on the vestry. Barclay states about this verse, grace is not only a gift, it is a grave responsibility. I am running with this gift and trying to do all that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I have a few more things that I want to say about this parable of the wedding feast in Matthew. It's a typical parable, which is to say it's a story with a strange twist. And if you take it as a literal story about planning to celebrate a wedding, basically I think you'd have to agree that it's absurd. Hopefully, if any of you have organized a wedding, been part of a wedding, thrown a wedding for your children, hopefully this was not your experience, that anybody killed your messengers or refused to come and all that. So, but being a parable, it's not like that, and it's hard to give a straightforward interpretation sort of beginning to end. The thing with parables is that, as we've said, they lend themselves to different interpretations, and also in some ways they point out truths that we're invited to live as much as to think about. So there are three things in particular that I want to shine a light on in this parable here this morning. And the first is the vision of the kingdom of heaven as a feast of abundance. It's a good time. The kingdom of heaven, of course, begins now and continues into the future. And God envisions it for us as a party, a feast. Lots of really good foods. I mean, not just cheese and crackers here. We're having oxen and fat calf. What more could you ask for? And no matter how many more people get invited, there's going to be enough for us to be able to share that feast. So that's one point. The second point I want to focus on is that strange image of the man without a wedding garment. He's invited at the last minute, he shows up, and the next thing you know, he's out on his bottom because he wasn't dressed properly. What is that supposed to mean? Well, I think one way of looking at that is that we're invited to this feast and we're supposed to be ready to party. You don't just come into the feast and pick up a plate of food and go sit on the sidelines and watch everybody else doing it. Church community, parish community, it's not a spectator sport. We come in and we're ready to be involved completely and fully. And that was true for those first disciples and continues to be true for us today. Now we all have different abilities and different talents and gifts and resources that we're able to share here, but it is about getting involved. And the third point that I want to kind of pull out of it is that we might think of ourselves in different roles in this story. We might see ourselves, of course, as those who come to the party and celebrate the feast. But we might also see ourselves in the role of the servants who were sent out to invite others in. What does that look like? I think that that's our call, to be welcomers, to be inviters, to be ready to bring people in both now and in the future, those future generations. This is, as I said, a place of peace. It's a treasure. And we want people to be able to come and enjoy it with us. So I just want to end with another story. Might be a little strange, but it seems pertinent. It's about two men who were shipwrecked, and they end up on a desert island. And one of them is pacing back and forth nervously at the shoreline. The other one makes himself a beach chair out of driftwood, and he's sitting there soaking in the rays and, basking in the sun. So the nervous guy says to him, "How can you just sit there like that? Aren't you really worried, about what's going to happen to us? Aren't you afraid that we're going to die here?" And the first guy says, "Nope, I'm not worried." He says, "I make $100,000 a week, and I tithe." That tithe is the term for the biblical standard of pledging 10% of your income. He says, "I make $100,000 a week, and I tithe. My pastor is going to find me." So enough said, I'm here for you.